Friends, there comes a moment in every sincere search when words begin to fail, not because they are inadequate, but because they have done all they can do. What remains is not another lesson, not another doctrine, but a final unveiling. This unveiling is often called the last teaching, and it is too powerful for most people, not because it is complex, but because it is disarmingly simple. 1. The statement that the last teaching does not add anything to you, but takes something away strikes at the very root of human conditioning. Most people approach learning, spirituality, or personal growth with the assumption that they are lacking something essential. From early life, we are trained to believe that fulfillment comes through accumulation, more knowledge, more discipline, more success, more understanding. This belief becomes so ingrained that even when one turns inward or toward higher truth, the same pattern continues. One seeks enlightenment as an achievement, imagining it as something that will enhance the self, refine the personality, or elevate one's status, even if subtly. The last teaching confronts this assumption directly and reveals that the sense of lack itself is the illusion. What is taken away is not something valuable, but something assumed, the belief that you are incomplete, broken, or unfinished. This belief operates quietly beneath most human activity, driving ambition, fear, comparison, and spiritual striving. When it is removed, the familiar motivation to become more collapses, and this can feel deeply unsettling. The mind equates loss with danger, so when the framework of becoming dissolves, it interprets the experience as emptiness or disorientation. In truth, what is being uncovered is fullness, but fullness without effort feels foreign to a consciousness trained in struggle. The difficulty arises because identity itself is often built around improvement. The personal self survives by defining itself as a work in progress. When the last teaching reveals that nothing is missing, the self has no role to play. There is nothing to fix, polish, or perfect. This does not produce excitement, it produces stillness. For many, stillness feels like stagnation or death because movement has been mistaken for life. The teaching does not destroy the individual, but it removes the false center around which the individual has been organized. This is why the teaching feels like loss even though it is liberation. The sense of being someone on a journey dissolves, and in its place is simple being. Nothing is added because nothing was ever absent. What disappears is the strain of becoming, and what remains is the quiet recognition of wholeness that was never earned and never lost. 2. The idea that truth is not found through effort runs contrary to nearly everything the human mind has been trained to believe. From childhood onward, effort is praised as the path to reward. Hard work leads to success, discipline leads to mastery, and persistence leads to results. This conditioning is so strong that it follows a person even into the deepest inquiries of life. When one begins to seek truth, meaning, or spiritual realization, the same pattern is unconsciously applied. The mind assumes that if it studies enough, practices long enough, or purifies itself thoroughly, truth will eventually be attained as a personal achievement. This assumption itself becomes the barrier. Effort is based on time, and time implies distance. To make an effort means to believe that what is sought is somewhere else, available later, and separate from what is present now. The last teaching reveals that truth is not an object waiting to be reached, but the very ground of awareness in which seeking appears. Because of this, effort does not bring truth closer, it subtly pushes it away. The more the mind tries to grasp truth, the more it reinforces the idea of separation between the seeker and the sought. This creates a loop of striving that never resolves, because the premise is false. When effort collapses, it does not mean passivity or indifference. It means the cessation of psychological striving, the inner tension that says, "I am not there yet." In that cessation, awareness naturally rests in itself. This resting is not produced by will. It happens when the compulsion to achieve falls away. Many find this frightening because effort gives a sense of control and purpose. Without effort, the mind feels it has nothing to do, and it equates this with loss of direction. Yet what is lost is only the habit of interference. The simplicity of this revelation is what makes it difficult to accept. The mind wants a method, a process, and a measurable outcome. Truth offers none of these. It reveals itself when the mind stops reaching and allows what is already present to be recognized. This recognition is immediate, but it cannot be forced. The absence of effort feels like standing still, yet in that stillness there is clarity without strain and understanding without struggle. What is discovered was never hidden. It was overlooked because the search itself was too noisy to allow seeing. 3. The removal of spiritual crutches is one of the most unsettling aspects of the last teaching because it dismantles the structures people use to feel safe while searching for truth. A spiritual crutch can be anything relied upon to mediate the relationship between oneself and reality, a teacher elevated above one's own awareness, a ritual believed to guarantee progress, a belief system that provides certainty, or even a practice used as a psychological refuge. These supports are not wrong in themselves, they often serve a purpose at earlier stages. However, over time they can quietly replace direct knowing with dependence. Most people are comfortable approaching truth indirectly. Intermediaries create a sense of order and reassurance. They offer explanations, promises, and methods that allow the mind to remain in control while appearing to move forward. The last teaching interrupts this arrangement by revealing that no external form can stand between awareness and what is real. This realization removes the comfort of delegation. One can no longer rely on someone else's authority, interpretation, or experience as a substitute for direct seeing. For many, this feels like abandonment rather than freedom. The discomfort arises because dependence has been mistaken for humility. Relying on outer forms can feel safer than trusting one's own capacity to perceive truth directly. Yet the last teaching exposes that what is truly being trusted is not truth, but structure. When structure is removed, the mind panics because it has been trained to function within frameworks. Without them, it feels groundless. This groundlessness is not a failure, it is the doorway. Reality does not require support, explanation, or validation. It stands on its own. When spiritual crutches fall away, there is a profound sense of exposure. Nothing can be leaned on, quoted, or followed mechanically. Awareness must stand alone without reference. This is where many retreat, not because the truth is harsh, but because it offers no protection for the false sense of self. The mind wants guarantees and signs of progress. The last teaching offers none. It simply reveals that what is sought has always been directly present, without mediation. The fear that arises is not fear of truth, but fear of standing without props, meeting life as it is, without filters, interpretations, or borrowed certainty. 4. The exposure of the illusion of the personal door strikes at one of the most deeply held assumptions in human consciousness. The belief that there is a separate individual entity inside the body who initiates actions, makes life happen, and controls outcomes. This belief is rarely questioned because it feels self-evident. Thoughts arise claiming ownership of actions, choices, successes, and failures, and these thoughts are accepted as proof of a central authority. The last teaching quietly dismantles this assumption by revealing that actions occur, decisions appear, and movements happen without a separate controller directing them. When this is first encountered, resistance naturally arises. The idea of a personal doer provides a sense of autonomy, importance, and responsibility. It gives the feeling of being in charge of one's life. To discover that life is unfolding through an impersonal intelligence rather than personal control feels threatening. The mind interprets this as loss of agency or even moral collapse. In reality, what dissolves is not functional responsibility but psychological ownership. Life continues to operate, often with greater clarity and ease, but without the burden of constant self-reference. The illusion of the door is maintained through thought. After an action occurs, thought claims it, saying, "I did this," or "I should have done that." These narratives create a sense of continuity and control, but they arise after the fact. The last teaching points to direct observation. Actions emerge spontaneously from countless causes, conditioning, circumstances, impulses, and intelligence beyond personal comprehension. Seeing this does not lead to passivity, it leads to humility. There is a recognition that life is far more vast and coordinated than the personal mind could manage. Resistance appears because the ego depends on authorship to survive. Without being the doer, it has no center from which to claim credit or assign blame. This is why the teaching can feel destabilizing, yet what replaces the sense of control is a deeper trust. When the burden of managing life is released, there is relief rather than chaos. The fear is rooted in misunderstanding. The teaching does not say nothing happens, it reveals that everything happens without the strain of personal control. What remains is participation without tension, action without anxiety, and movement without the constant weight of me trying to direct the flow of existence. 5. The inability to defend, explain, or prove the last teaching is deeply unsettling to a mind that relies on logic, evidence, and agreement for security. Human understanding is conditioned to trust what can be verified, articulated, and defended against opposition. Ideas are considered valid when they can be explained clearly and supported with arguments. The last teaching does not function within this framework, not because it is vague or mystical, but because it points to something prior to concepts themselves. Any attempt to explain it turns it into a logical truth, and in doing so misses what it is pointing toward. Proof belongs to the realm of separation. To prove something, there must be a subject who proves and an object to be proven. The last teaching reveals a reality in which this division collapses. Awareness is both the means and the recognition. Because of this, no external validation is possible. This frustrates the mind, which wants certainty through comparison, consensus, or authority. The teaching does not compete with other views, nor does it attempt to persuade. It stands quietly indifferent to acceptance or rejection. When someone asks for an explanation, words can only gesture, never deliver. Language operates by defining, contrasting, and limiting, while the truth being indicated is boundless and immediate. This creates the illusion that the teaching is incomplete or evasive. In reality, it is complete in itself, and words are only provisional tools. Those who demand clarity in conceptual form often conclude that the teaching is impractical or empty, not realizing that they are asking the wrong instrument to perform the task. Defenselessness is another aspect that feels threatening. The last teaching offers no arguments to protect itself because it does not exist as a position. Positions require defense because they can be attacked. What is being pointed to cannot be attacked or supported, as it is not an idea among other ideas. This leaves the ego exposed. Without the ability to argue, justify, or convince, the sense of personal authority weakens. Many retreat at this point, preferring beliefs they can debate rather than a truth that dissolves the need to be right. This quality of being unprovable is not a flaw but a safeguard. It prevents the teaching from becoming ideology. It ensures that recognition can only arise through direct seeing, not persuasion. The moment one stops trying to understand it conceptually, there is space for something more intimate to reveal itself, an immediate knowing that requires no explanation and seeks no approval. 6. The demand for inner silence rather than agreement challenges the habit of relating to truth through opinion and belief. Agreement is a mental activity. It happens when the mind compares what it hears with what it already believes and decides whether it aligns or conflicts. This process gives a sense of participation and understanding, but it never goes beyond thought. One can agree wholeheartedly with a statement and yet remain untouched by its deeper implication. The last teaching bypasses this level entirely and points to a space where thought no longer dominates. Inner silence is not the absence of sound or activity, but the suspension of the compulsive need to interpret, judge, and conclude. It is the quieting of the inner commentary that constantly labels experience. This is difficult because the mind has been trained to stay active, to respond immediately, and to assert opinions as a way of maintaining identity. Silence feels like loss of ground. Without commentary, the mind feels it has no reference point, and this produces discomfort or restlessness. Agreement allows the ego to remain intact. One can agree and still feel knowledgeable, correct, or spiritually aligned. Silence, however, removes these supports. In silence, there is no position to hold and no conclusion to defend. This is why many resist it. They mistake silence for passivity or emptiness, not realizing that it is actually a state of heightened receptivity. When mental noise subsides, awareness becomes more vivid, and perception is no longer filtered through habitual patterns. The last teaching cannot be received through thought, because thought always operates in the past, using memory and concepts. Silence opens the possibility of direct perception, which is always immediate. This does not mean that thoughts stop permanently, but that they lose their authority. They are seen as movements within awareness rather than as the source of truth. This shift is subtle yet profound, and it cannot be achieved by willpower. The more one tries to become silent, the more noise is generated. Silence arises naturally when the urge to grasp meaning relaxes. It is not something added, but something revealed when interference ceases. In this silence, understanding is not verbalized, yet it is unmistakable. There is clarity without explanation and recognition without analysis. Those who seek agreement will continue to collect ideas. Those who allow silence discover that truth does not speak in words, but it is known directly, without effort, conclusion, or mental affirmation. Conclusion. The essence of this entire teaching points toward a single, quiet realization. What is most real cannot be managed, possessed, or approached through the usual structures of thought, effort, and dependence. Each point dismantles another layer of assumption, the belief in lack, in striving, in intermediaries, in personal control, in conceptual certainty, and in mental agreement. What remains after these fall away is not confusion, but simplicity. Yet simplicity feels threatening to a mind conditioned to complexity and struggle. This is why the last teaching appears too powerful for most people to handle. It does not meet the ego's expectations or reward its efforts. It offers no identity to adopt, no system to master, and no authority to lean upon. Instead, it leaves one face to face with direct awareness, unsupported and unadorned. This confrontation is not dramatic, it is quietly radical. It asks for nothing except the willingness to stop interfering with what already is. For those who are ready, this ending is not a loss but a homecoming. For those who are not, the pull back toward effort, belief, and structure is almost irresistible. The teaching remains unchanged either way, patient and complete, waiting for the moment when resistance softens and simplicity is no longer feared.